everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Roy Kennedy.
And today we're taking a look at the newest new factions for Summoner Wars. It feels like we just did this.
We did just do this, but I'm excited for more.
Well, we delayed the last one a little bit, and now we're on the ball with these. So we have the Wayfarers and the Shadow Elves. So they're still doing new factions. They haven't yet gone back and done like another summoner for the same faction.
Right, yeah, for sure.
So the Shadow Elves are, well, evil elves, I suppose. Right. Wayfarers are people?
I've been actually looking forward to this one for a while. Shadow Elves was my favorite faction from the old first edition, so I was excited to play the new ones.
I don't think Wayfarers were in the first edition,
I think they're
unless
brand
they're the
new.
Benders.
No, the Benders have already been kind of done and rechanged their name, so this is a completely new thing.
Well, let's take a look at these factions, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're first going to look at the Wayfarers here. So we have Celeste. Now, Celeste has a 3 ranged attack, but it's +1 for each friendly unit on your opponent's side of the battlefield to a maximum of 3. So since you're going to run your units over there as fast as you can, that means she's going to be walking around often with a 6 ranged, which is pretty powerful. This faction is all about maneuverability. Like this guy who's free can attack units that are diagonal. You can throw him out and quick do some fast damage with him. The Eager Adventurer, when you put them out, they start with 2 boosts, and you can spend a boost to make them go 1 space towards your opponent's back row, which means you're going to be running back that way. But with a 3 attack for a cost of 2, this is pretty good. Spirit Voyager, you can, after they move, you can put them adjacent to a friendly unit within 2. They can do some pretty crazy maneuvering that way, and then they get a 3 ranged. You can really get close to your opponent's summoner pretty fast with them. And then the Gem Dancer, who has some decent health here. When they target an adjacent common for an attack, they can exchange place with them. So it's all these guys are about moving. Gusto, one of the champions, when he moves, he can force that person towards your opponent's back row. You're a friendly unit, so he's pushing them back. Tess, when she moves, she can exchange place with a friendly structure. So that's really interesting because she could shoot all the way to the other side of the board if you get a structure over there, and I'll show you a structure that can go over there. So you have your gates, but you also have these astral waypoints, which can be built, and they can be put next to any friendly structure. So when you're fast maneuvering, you run to the other side of the board, put one of these over there, and you can exchange places with that structure. So it's a way, you'll get at least one person over there, but then again, Tess can also jump with any structure, including walls. And then this guy, one of the most maneuverable people in the game, whenever he moves or attacks, you can put him on a space that's diagonal to it after he moves or attacks, which means you can do that twice. Then in the events, I already showed you the one. This one's interesting. It's more like a quest than an event. Basically, if you get a unit to your opponent's back row after you play this, which never is discarded here until it happens, you can retrieve 3 of your different common units. This, you put 2 boosts on it. You can spend 1 boost to put your summoner in a space that's diagonal to it. So you can do that. Looks like twice in the same turn. And this one here, when this is active, everyone gets to move an extra space. And they're +1 when they're next to other units. So in the Wayfarers, basically, if I was to describe them in one word, it would be movement. Now the Shadow Elves are all going to be about, well, damaging gates, I think, is probably the best word. First of all, this guy, he only has 11 hit points, but he starts out with a straight 5 range. It's pretty strong. Anytime someone's damaged on your team that's within 3 spaces, you put boost on him, and you can return 2 boosts to put a friendly unit back in your hand. So if someone's about to die, you can kind of rescue them. So his common units, he has the Shadow Mage, which lets you add a damage to this unit or an adjacent gate to draw a card. All right, so you can take a damage or add one to an adjacent gate, hopefully your opponent's gates. But he has a 3 ranged. This guy's a 2 range, and he can attack through units the turn it's summoned, which is pretty neat. And when you summon it, you can move it an extra space. Pretty good. The Shadow Knight, when summoning him, you target a friendly unit that does not have Shadow Summon. You can go next to that target, adding 1 damage to them. And when they're destroyed, you add 1 to your summoner. So these guys are amazing, but they're dangerous because when they blow up, your summoner gets hurt. But still, for a cost of 1, 2 damage, 5 health, that's pretty neat. True Seekers, they're +2 strength, and whenever they attack, you can force them to move 1 or 2 spaces. So you can see these guys are also good at maneuvering. But look at their champions. Samara, So if they kill an enemy unit, you add 1 damage to the enemy summoner. Otherwise, you add 1 to your own summoner. So they're dangerous. This is a very interesting one to play with because you go around and kill cheap units. You can kill your opponent's summoner, and they're going to be forced to be very careful. If you don't, though, it hurts you. It's kind of an interesting one. They're just going to be running up and fighting as fast as they can. This one, if they're next to a damaged enemy gate, and you saw there's plenty of ways to do that, you can put a friendly comment adjacent to that gate. So you've warped the gate, and now you turn it into something that summons your own units. And this gets boosted anytime a friendly unit leaves the battlefield for any reason, and they can spend boost to add that much damage to an adjacent common or champion. I really like that one. As my people die, you will be punished. But I think the events of this particular deck are where it's different. This Shadow Pulse, pick any number of units that are adjacent to 1 or more damaged gates, add 1 damage to each target. So if you damage your opponent's gates, you don't want to destroy them. You let them come out of these gates, and then you hit them with 1 or more Shadow Pulses. Into Darkness, target a gate or a common card that has 5 or fewer remaining life, and you add it and any cards under it to each card's owner's hand. And that's just, man, you can just get rid of stuff, including gates. It's such an interesting thing. Here, this gives your summoner the ability to, anyone that leaves the battlefield, you can replace that unit with this unit. So that's neat. You can kind of switch people around. And then the Onyx Tome lets you take any card other than this or an epic event. And so that means you can't take Into Darkness, but you can take your Shadow Pulses back into your hand and throw them back. And where's the card that did it? The Onyx Tome. And then you can resolve the following effect 2 times, add 1 damage to a friendly unit. So this faction here, the Shadow Elves, they're going to hurt themselves, and they're also hurting gates. But they're doing so to hopefully do enough damage to kill your opponent. Okay, so interestingly enough, we have someday, me and Roy will rank all the factions.
Yeah.
Right?
I think those rankings will probably be very different because every single time I play a faction, you play a faction, I'm like, I really like this one, you really like that one.
It is really the case, it is. And in this case, Wayfarers is amazing, and Shadow Elves might be the very bottom. And I'll tell you why. Because that whole just keep injuring yourself to do better.
You've never liked that in any game.
The only time I like it is I like the ogres and like Hulk things, like the more damage they take, the stronger they get.
Right.
I don't mind that. That's fun. And damaging the gates in this is interesting, but
I had a lot of fun with them. I liked the interesting concept. They're very different from the old Shadow Elves for sure, because these old Shadow Elves were very much assassin-y. These also feel like they can kind of do a little bit of assassin stuff, but it's very much about like damaging gates and trying to figure out how to like get your opponents near the gates and then be able to burst damage on them when they're maybe not expecting it. I do like that they can grab cards out of your discard pile to be able to use them again. So there's kind of cool combos with that stuff as well. But the Wayfarers were crazy as well.
Wayfarers, I love maneuverability.
Yeah.
Okay, and I like just being able to run all over the board, to attack diagonal, to move diagonal.
The diagonal thing is like their theme, right? It's like they can attack diagonal, move diagonal, and that opens up so many like abilities that you can do, and so many more ways that you can maybe like get a jump on your opponent where they maybe weren't thinking about it. Because like, oh, we can slide through cracks where normally you're blocking your opponent in a lot of different ways in Summoner Wars. They can get through all those blocks and try to sneak them from behind.
So they're both kind of fast factions to some degree. The Shadow Elves are also, they're not as fast as the Wayfarers, but they're fast. They both have summoners that are fairly lower. I mean, it's 11 and 12 hit points, which is not that much, but they also both can pack a punch.
They do a ton of damage.
Yeah, so, and it's ranged, which is pretty powerful. I think that both of these are cards that you need to, I don't know that I would call either of these a beginner's deck. I don't know that Summoner Wars is that complex, but
they're very aggressive, you know.
Like the Wayfarers, don't discard your gates because they're so about the gates. And if you're playing against the Shadow Elves, you need to know about them because you need to realize what your opponent can do with your own gates.
Right.
Like if you sit your summoner right next to your own gate, like I'm just going to hide here, and he can just pop people in from your gate.
Yeah.
And that's crazy powerful.
Yeah, I love what they've done with the new edition of Summoner Wars, just making it so that the summoners are so much more like in the game, and like you need to get them in the front lines. Like the Wayfarers, like you're getting all of your people across the line. It's not a defensive game. They've made the whole game just more aggressive, and I'm here for it for all the factions. It's been really fun.
Yeah, so I would rank the Shadow Elves a 6, but that's in the purpose of the game.
Right.
That's in the purpose of the game, right? I would still play them, but the Wayfarers I give a 10.
Holy smokes. That's so much different than me. I'm going to give the Shadow Elves a 9.5. I think they're amazing. I think they're really fun. I like the whole aspect of doing gates and pulling stuff out of your discard pile and just being assassins jumping in there. The Wayfarers, I'm also giving a 9 because I think the movement in them is amazing. Like, I think it's really cool, the diagonal stuff and trying to force yourself across the gate and then having those little quests where you get all the way across and you get extra guys back and they just have that longevity in the long game as well. I think they're really awesome.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Summoner Wars, Shadow Elves, and Wayfarers. I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Roy Kennedy.
Still love this game.